Today, we're taking a single photo, one exposure with the Milky Way, some lightsabers, no blending, no composites. We're going to talk about planning, our settings, and using only Lightroom for our post-processing. So let's get started. So what we want to do is, one, we want to be in a new moon phase or pretty close to it. Right now we had the new moon about 2 or 3 days ago, so it's going to be perfect. We don't want that bright moon. We won't be able to see the Milky Way. Also, we want to have a clear sky. We have a lot of clouds up in the sky right now, but it looks like from the weather that it's going to clear up for tonight, so we should have a clear sky. And we got to find where the Milky Way is. So what we want to do is, I'm going to use something called Photo Pills. It's an app, it's a paid app. There's some free ones out there you can use as well. But what I want to do is find out where the Milky Way is going to be so that I know when I'm coming out here at night that I can set up my composition to where I'm going to be lined up perfectly. So right now it is the end of September, beginning of October. So the Milky Way is going to be out really early. So what I want to do is open up my Photo Pills app, and then I'm going to go to the moon phase, and I want to see what time the moonrise is and what time it sets. So it's going to set around 9:27, and it's going to be a waxing crescent, so it's only going to be about a 20% moon. It's going to be a real small sliver, and also about 8:25 we're going to be able to see the Milky Way. So what I want to do is find that sweet spot for when the moon is just setting. So around 9:30 tonight is going to be absolutely perfect. The Milky Way is going to be almost straight up and down. So what I want to do now is, now that I have the information where I know tonight's going to be a good night, I need to find out when the Milky Way is going to be. So what I want to do is get out of the moon pill, and I want to go to where it says night AR. And here what I want to do is I want to set up to where I can see where exactly the Milky Way is going to be at what time. Because I want that photo and I want that Milky Way to be straight up, because I'm going to have my lightsabers, and I think the cool factor is going to be much better if I have just a straight up Milky Way, and I want to be right under it. So what I want to do is find out when that Milky Way is going to be straight up and down, and I can set up my camera to where I'm just everything's ready to go. I don't have to mess around in the dark and try and find the composition of where it's going to be. Not that I can't do that, it just makes it much easier that I know exactly where I'm going to be. All we have to do now is just cross our fingers that the weather's going to cooperate, and then we're going to set up tonight. So I'll see you guys in a few hours. Alright guys, the Milky Way is in the spot we thought it was going to be exactly. So the Photo Pills app was extremely accurate. Now let's talk about settings a little bit. What we're going to do is, I'm going to have a 10-second exposure. So my shutter speed is going to be 10 seconds. My ISO is going to be 5000. And then my aperture is going to be all the way wide open. On this lens, it's 1.8. So I'm shooting on a 20mm 1.8 lens. Because the lightsabers are so bright, as that 10-second shutter speed is going, I'm going to count. And this is going to be a little bit of experimentation. So it's going to be only lighting the lightsabers for about 1 to 2 seconds. And I'm going to test it first. I'm going to try 2 seconds, and if that's too bright, I'm going to try 1 second. That way I'm not completely blowing it out. You guys are going to see the before photos and the after. What we'll do is we'll go on the computer and I'll show you guys the results. All right, for you Star Wars fans, make sure to stick around to the end. I have a little surprise for you. Let's jump on the computer here, and first thing I want to talk about is this very first shot that I did. Like I said, it was going to be an experiment on how long I would light these lightsabers. You can see here that it is just completely blown out. With the 10-second exposure, you can see up here in the top right, 10 seconds. I counted to 8 while the photo was being taken, and then I lit the lightsabers for about 2 seconds, and that was way, way too long. So after a bit of experimentation, I finally found the right one, or the closest to it. I mean, I was counting all the way up to 9, so there's really not anything else I could have done with this one. I did take another couple shots like this, where I was able to lower the ISO. You can see up here I'm at ISO 500, but because I wanted to get this in one shot, this, you know, setting it up for 9 seconds, counting down, and then only lighting the lightsabers for 1 second. This is as good as it was going to get, which is fine. I said it's a little blown out right here in this area, but not that big of a deal. So what I want to do here is not a whole lot. I want to keep this really natural and not a strong edit with a bunch of things doing in Photoshop. I want to do all of this in Lightroom. So the first thing that I want to do is go into the detail tab, and I want to do some masking, some sharpening, and some noise reduction. I leave the sharpening around 40. Radius is 0.5. The detail, I want to bring it all the way up to 100. And then holding down Option or Alt if you're on a PC, and just dragging this masking up to where the only thing being sharpened you can see are the stars and a little bit of the outline. So right about there, maybe 70, 75. And because I don't want to apply any of the sharpening to the dark areas, it just doesn't make any sense to do that. As far as noise reduction, I bring that up to, I'm going to be pretty liberal with this because it's a single image. I try not to go above 30 for the most part, but because I'm at such a high ISO, I think I want to have it around 40-ish or so, and that gives it a nice look. If I turn this on and off, you can see quite a bit of difference just in that noise reduction. And then coming in here to the effects tab, there is a little bit of a vignette here you can see. So I want to be really, really gentle with this. Maybe at like +4, maybe +3 is good. And then I'm going to feather that also. And then as far as my import preset, I already have the chromatic aberration and enable profile correction. That's just an import preset that I've made that I do on all my photos. And then I also use the profile Adobe Neutral for my Milky Way photos. If you do like Adobe Color or landscape or something, it's really, really contrasty, and it makes these blacks just, it doesn't look very good. All right, I'm not going to do a whole lot to this as far as global adjustments. The highlights is the only thing I'm going to touch here. I'm going to bring the highlights down, and that's going to be this area right here. I want to bring that down to where it looks just a little bit better. I mean, you go down too low and it just looks all washed out. Maybe something like that. Close this up, and then I'm going to go into the masking tab up here. Select sky. It's going to detect my sky, which is really nice. It does a great job of that. It masks out all the trees. And then I'm going to bring up the exposure just a little bit here. And then I don't like the warm temperature in the sky, so I'm going to cool that down quite a bit. I prefer a bluer sky. It's my own personal preference. Some people like the warmer sky, but I think I'm going to have it about right there. And I want to bring out this Milky Way core a little bit. And I'm not going to touch the contrast slider. So the contrast slider is a global slider. It spreads out your whites and your blacks evenly. And I don't like that. I like to have more control. So what I'm going to do is start off with the whites. And with the whites, I'm going to drag this up pretty liberally up to maybe 57, 60, something like that. And then with the blacks, I'm going to bring it down maybe around 20. So if I was to use the contrast slider, it would just spread these out equally. And I don't want to do that. Using the whites and black sliders just gives me a little bit more control. I want to also add just a little bit more noise reduction because we brought the white slider up. We're going to introduce a little bit more noise. Just going to touch this up just a little bit, maybe like 8 or 10. And that'll just give me just enough noise reduction here to compensate for the whites that I just brought up. So what I want to do now is I'm going to grab another mask, and I'm going to do a radial gradient this time. And I'm just going to concentrate on the Milky Way. I'm going to make sure there's plenty of feather here. Maybe just bring this up a little bit more like this. Now bring up the exposure just a little bit. You go up too much, you can start to see it here, and I don't want to do that. So maybe around like maybe 0.3-ish. Again, with the whites, I'm going to bring that up and then bring down the darks a little bit. So I'm just adding this contrast again. And like I said, I'm not doing the contrast slider. I'm controlling my whites and my blacks separately. So bringing that up to around 40. And then my blacks, I want to bring it back down. And you can see up here, there was a bit of cloud in the sky. It cleared up a little bit, but there's still some clouds here on the horizon and out here on the edges as well. Because I used whites again, I'm going to add just a little bit more noise reduction, maybe like 5 or 6. All right. Now, what I'm looking at here also is the crop. So all of this out here doesn't really help the photo at all. It doesn't really do anything. I'm going to do a square crop on this and center myself right there, Milky Way in the middle, and boom, that's it, guys. That's all I do for this photo. I'll show you guys a couple of creative edits where I took it into Photoshop here at the end. Stay tuned for the photos, but here it is. Okay, guys, I've had for about 2 months now a little bit of a secret. So for you Star Wars fans, I have had a Star Wars channel. I started it in mid-June. It's all about Star Wars lore, TV shows, books, comics, all that kind of stuff. It's super nerdy. So if you guys are into Star Wars, I will leave a link in the description to that channel. And here's the photos I came up with. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you on the next one.